Hello, here's a quick little behind the scenes from my steamed hams, but it's a shadow play from the Ottoman Empire. I had the idea of doing a shadow puppet version of this for quite a while, and in my research came across a shadow play tradition which originated in the Ottoman Empire and is still alive throughout the region today. Empires fall, but art goes on. Anyway, it focuses on two main characters. Karagaz, the impulsive, boisterous peasant always plotting his next scheme, and Hasivat, the upper class, educated one who thinks he can civilize Karagaz. Basically, two idiots who act as foils to one another, kind of like the odd couple, a concept as old as comedy itself, and I think you can see where I'm going with this. Traditional forms of theater tend to be built from a collection of stock characters or archetypes, and often stereotypes. The Simpsons is really no different. It has a set of characters who each represent some arrangement of human foible and can be used to tell topical stories or make political commentary. A puppet can say things the person controlling it can't. I think that's why the Steamed Ham skit has resonated the way it has. It is at its core a classic bit that goes back to the origins of theater. There is a dynamic between Skinner and the superintendent that can be found all the way down through the history of storytelling. Now, that's just the idea, and ideas are a dime a dozen. How did I do it? First off, the traditional puppets were made from animal hide, which was oiled to become transparent. I wanted to make them out of materials I had on hand, so needless to say, I opted for a different method. I noticed that the Karagaz character had an articulated arm, allowing for wild gesticulating, while the more proper Hasivat did not. I assumed this wasn't just to differentiate the two characters, but had practical purposes. I'm right-handed, so I designed the more complex puppet, in this case Skinner, for my right hand. I drew my initial designs out on a sheet of Bristol in pencil, then traced them onto vellum with a black Sharpie. I was originally thinking of cutting out pieces of colored gel to get the color effects, but ended up just using colored Sharpies. The plan was to laminate the vellum between two sheets of clear polyester stencil material I had kicking around, using a wood glue tinted with watercolor paint. It didn't really turn out as I hoped for, so I started over. I redrew the designs on vellum, but this time, rather than keeping them as one sheet, I cut out each piece and glued them individually onto the sheet of polyester. The traditional puppets have dashed lines cut to create dimensionality, so I did that to these before gluing each of them to another sheet of polyester. I let them dry between a couple books to keep them flat, then cut out the final pieces. I used some electrical wire that I had to make the joints. It was probably a bit too thick, but I didn't feel like going out to buy something else. I glued some wooden dowels directly to the puppets, but this was too rigid, and ultimately I went with a felt hinge. For the rest of the props, I just drew them out on the vellum and used a spray adhesive to attach them to a single sheet of polyester. Nothing as elaborate as the primary characters, which I wanted to have a greater texture to them. After the physical assets were built, I recorded the audio. I was considering finding someone to actually translate and record everything in Turkish, but decided to just stick to the original script and record it all myself in English using a terrible accent. I threw a couple of Turkish words in there, and I'm very sorry if I completely butchered your language. I grappled with doing more localizations, like making it steamed kebabs or referring to an expression in Istanbul or something to that effect, but in the end decided not to and focus on the performance aspect.
These hamburgers are similar to the ones they have at Krusty Burger.
Ho ho ho, I are back to Skinner Burger, old family recipe.
To make this sound like a live performance, I added reverb.
Sometimes, despite fact, they're obviously grilled.
Yeah, I know. The one thing I should... excuse me for 1 second.
Canned laughter from the crowd.
Oh, Shahadai. Good time was had by all I am pooped.
I should... what is happening in there?
And some serious room noise.
Aurora Borealis. This time of year. This time of day. This part of country. Localized in kitchen.
I built the frame for the screen using a couple C-stands. The screen was a piece of Lycra wrapped around two arms, which I twisted until everything was tight and could lock in place with the gobos. From the front, I cut a piece of black foam board to make the top of the frame and hung a couple black curtains from the sides. I used a single light with a little bit of diffusion above my head as the light source and went on my way. The entire piece was broken into 4 separate scenes that I performed in sync to the audio. These were then cut together to appear as one continuous performance. I wanted to have the end result looking the way it did from my perspective, so I flipped the resulting footage. I hope you enjoyed the video as well as this brief behind the scenes. Now I gotta figure out what I'm gonna do next, so I'll see you soon.